Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the show. This is episode number 291. And so all of the show notes and everything we're going to talk about here can be found by cruising over to sweetlifeco.com, click on the podcast, and just remember the number 291. I'm April Beach. If we haven't connected before, I help specialists, subject matter experts, coaches, consultants, speakers, and authors scale their business online by developing $1 million programs with lifestyle freedom. And so if that's what you're looking for, everything we talk about here on the Sweet Life Entrepreneur podcast is designed to give you proven strategies and steps to accomplish that. So thank you so much for joining us here. Let's kind of unpack who this episode is for. So we've been talking a lot about licensing and what licensing is and how to take the courses and the trainings and the content and the frameworks that you have already created. You've already been using them in your consulting business and actually allow other companies to deliver them and actually license them to other companies, giving other companies, corporations, small businesses, even micro entrepreneurs just like you, the ability to distribute your trainings, whether internally to their teams or externally as part of their products. It is a huge, not great secret because I'm trying to make it not a secret, and everything that we've been doing in this series here on the show for the last couple of episodes is introducing experts like you to this possibility. And so we're moving from really what is licensing, what is the program, how to do it. Now we're moving into how to sell it. And I brought in our very own Emily Hall. Emily is an absolute expert when it comes to selling programs to other companies. She comes in and she works with our clients and handles our clients' development of their sales processes as well. And so she was certainly the best person to bring into this show and introduce you to. And so we are going to unpack in this particular episode who to actually sell it to. It's a question I get all the time. You know, you guys say, April, I have this great course, I have this great training, but how do I know who wants to buy it? I'm used to selling it B2C. Now I'm thinking of selling it B2B. What companies are out there that would want to buy my training? Especially some of you guys have amazing niche trainings, like off the wall, super specific. And we're going to be giving some case studies of very specific niche trainings. And in this episode, we're going to unpack how to actually go through the process of identifying who to sell it to. So Emily is coming in here, and we're also unpacking for you the top 5 industries and the types of programs that they are buying. This is very important for you to understand. So as we're walking through, we're telling you how to connect with companies, how to reach out, how to get the ball rolling to sell your programs to companies, but also what the top 5 industries are looking for in the programs they're buying right now. This is a really powerful episode for you. And on top of it, we of course have an amazing bonus training. If you have not dove in yet, cruise over to Licensing Launchpad. And you can go to licensinglaunchpad.com. It's a little mini training. On today's show, we're only covering 5 different industries. In Licensing Launchpad, we unpack for you 10 top industries and exactly all the programs they're buying. And we even give you the names of the positions of the people in these companies and who to reach out to connect with, to sell your program to. So we've done all that work for you already. You can cruise over to licensinglaunchpad.com to get started. And of course, listen to this episode. So let's go ahead and dive in with Emily Hall. All right, you guys, welcome back to the show. I am super excited about our next expert who's actually hanging out here with us for the next couple of shows. It's been long awaited that Emily Hall and I have been trying to get together and record these podcast episodes for you. First of all, this is not just a podcast episode like every single one of our episodes, I guess, we drop. This is really a training, and it's really important for you all to understand that you should be taking notes here, because what Emily is about to walk you through, people pay thousands and thousands of dollars for this information that she's gonna guide you through on these next couple of podcast episodes. So if you are again in the place where you want to license your trainings and courses to companies, you're really ready to scale your business, listen up. Today we are talking about actually who to sell your program to, who to license your program to, who to license your training from a B2B perspective. And so I'm so pleased to bring in Emily to guide us through this process and this conversation. And Emily, you're always in there working with our clients. You guys, our clients are really lucky. If you want to be one of them, you know where to find us, because Emily literally rolls up her sleeves with our clients all the time, working through these sales processes. And I wanted to give you guys a taste of how amazing she is. And the biggest thing that everybody asks is, how do I sell it? How do I sell my licensed program to another company? Who do I sell it to? And it kind of just seems like this huge barrier and block, especially for experts and coaches and consultants coming from the coaching space. And this is very different. It's actually much more simple, in my opinion. But talk us through this process. What does it look like? How does one even determine who is the best buyer for their program?
Yeah, like you said, it's a really, really common hang up. You know, especially if you're already selling B2C, you know who that audience is, you know who that individual buyer is. And when you try to identify companies with those same profiles, it's not apples to apples. It's apples to oranges for sure. And so figuring out who to target can be a really, really hard spot. So what we really encourage our clients to do, and we help them kind of go through, is a little bit of a narrowing down process. So we start with, based on your program, based on your course, your workshop, your training, whatever your material that you're licensing is, are there any immediate industries that you know would benefit from the transformation that you provide in terms of financial success? So financial success is going to be kind of that initial hook that most companies are going to be looking for. There's obviously layers of reasons that companies say yes to buying programs, but the financial benefit of that is one of the biggest ones. And you want to look at that through two perspectives. The first one is the internal benefit. So how will it help their employees be more productive, be more engaged, be more happy, be more successful in what they're trying to accomplish? And then whoever that company's client is, their customer, their end user, whatever services they're providing, how can your program help them be more successful in how they deliver their services? So looking at the internal financials, so how does it help their staff, how does it help their employees, and then also how does it help their customers? So figuring out just out of the gate, are there any industries, any companies, any specific organizations that really make sense out of the gate for that? That's kind of the first thing that we look at. That can help to narrow it down, because there are a million places to take your program and it's hard to know where to start.
Right. And I love that you said that too, because we've used that language a lot here on the podcast recently about how to pick what programs you want to license. And we've talked about, is your program something that is internally facing or externally facing? And you're right, both certainly benefit both. But the first thing, if you guys are listening to this and you have a course or a training that you want to figure out how to license to other companies, you're tired of selling them directly yourself. And that's exactly kind of what Emily is saying here now, not just identifying the product, but going in and now identifying how it benefits the company internally and externally as well. I think that's brilliant. Not just the actual hardcore product itself, but the extenuating benefits for sure.
Yeah. So the second thing, kind of the second step, second tier of this is to look at your own experience. You're not brand new to your expertise. You're not brand new to doing this. So what industries do you have experience in? What networks are you connected in that would lead to a stronger, easier, smoother connection into a specific industry, into a specific organization? A lot of times that's a really strong way to start. Leveraging those relationships, using the networks that you've spent, years building as a professional to help you launch into this B2B side of licensing is a really, really smart way to do it. You're not starting from scratch. You're not reaching out for cold calls. You're leveraging the assets that you've got. A lot of times programs can go into lots of different industries. So being able to kind of choose that lowest hanging fruit, if you will, of, all right, what can I do to get the most success immediately, get that social proof, get that sale, get that success, get those results for those clients, and then be able to move on to the next one. So that's kind of that second side of it, is what the company, what they need, what will benefit them, and then also what's going to be easiest for you.
Yeah, and that's so interesting too, because so a lot of our listeners haven't been part of corporate for a long time, or they might not have established corporate relationships. I remember the first time I sold my like first big deal license package, it was to an industry that I had never set foot in my life. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I feel like such a fish out of water here. But I know a lot of our clients that still then go on to sell programs into industries where they have zero experience or they have zero connection. And so I love what you teach our clients. Like, there are shortcuts to do this. If you don't have established relationships, if you don't have established connections, you actually have shortcuts on how to find the best industries that actually align with your program. Can we dive into that a little bit here for our users too?
Yes, yes. There are definitely five main industries that we see program sales being the most successful in. The first one is a little bit of kind of the broad category of corporations, and what we look at within those are, tech companies, financial companies, insurance companies, maybe professional services, things like that, really large organizations that are providing services directly to customers. So those industries they tend to be large. They tend to take a longer time to close because you have um, more,
Lever, levels and
yeah.
red tape.
Yes, yes. Lots of hoops to jump through for sure. But they tend to be some of the biggest. And so they tend to have the largest payouts. And so and they're very established. They're very easy to understand how they work. They're very similar to each other. And so once you kind of dial in your value proposition for one company, you can very easily take it to different companies that are similar. So that is one that's really, really successful, especially for yeah, it's a very, very
Right.
successful industry.
Right. And I know that our listeners are like saying, okay, when you say like big deals, like big sales deals, we love dropping numbers for you guys here on the podcast. I know that we have current clients right now that are in deals with big industries for over $1 million for one course. What other numbers have you seen, Emily, when we're talking about licensing your training and program to these larger corporations? What are some of the sales numbers that you have seen with program selling in the past?
Yeah, it depends on the specificity of the course, really, and how many people in the organization it applies to. It can be as little as, 2 to 500,000 up over in the multiple of millions, just depending on what segment of the organization it's targeting, what area of their team is going to be using it, or what segment of their end users or their customers are going to be using it. But there's definitely a really broad range there.
Right. I love how you said as little as 250 to 500,000. No big deal.
Yeah.
We're talking about one training, guys, one course. So we really want to let you know that this is feasible. People are doing it. Our clients are doing it. You can be doing it too. Okay, so that's one area, is the professional training, like the larger corporations are purchasing programs all the time. What
Yes.
is another industry that you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah. So while those organizations typically have pretty large budgets that are pretty flexible, one that they surprisingly have larger budgets than people realize is the government and education side of things. So we see a lot of people find success selling to government organizations and educational entities, because governments and educational organizations, they have set budgets, they have money that they have to spend, they have grants, they have bonds, they have all these pools of money that have to be spent. And so being able to really tap into those and build relationships is so helpful. The other great thing is once you get into one, they tend to refer to each other, so it tends to be a really nice domino effect of you seeing multiple sales after that initial deal closes, of other similar organizations in other states or other parts of the country or other regions or other departments wanting a similar transformation. That referral network within government and within education is really, really strong, so it's very, very beneficial to tap into that industry.
That's fascinating. And again, we do, you and I are both working collectively with clients that have government deals and education deals. And so, what I'm hearing you say, and what I've heard you say to our clients as well, is that they literally have the money and they actually have to spend it. So, it's not, they're there, they're looking for programs constantly to fit into certain areas, both education, and this is, these are primary education, secondary education, and government, and they are always looking for curriculum and programs, and they do have the funding for that. So that's exciting for you to hear, hopefully exciting for you listeners to hear, as exciting it is for me to have her tell you that. Okay, so number 3, we talked about larger corporations, we talked about government and education. Now, what is the third industry that we often see programs being sold into?
Yeah, so the third one is actually the startup world. And by startup world, I mean not necessarily your, bootstrapping entrepreneur or your, brick and mortar small business. I'm talking about the startups that go through the funding process, go through the venture capital whole chain of barriers
Yes.
to try and get up and grow. Those organizations have they have a lot of cash. So especially depending on where they're at in their funding stages, they have cash to burn and they have to spend it in specific ways. So being able to tap into those that part of the industry, that startup industry of companies, is really, really helpful if you were able to help them reach their next funding goal, help them reach their next milestone of rolling out, building, launching, scaling their product. There are different levels of funding that are unlocked at different levels. So if you can help an organization get to that next place in a way that saves them money, saves them time, makes them look good, it's going to be a much, much easier sale. So you see a lot of success in startups with programs that help companies accomplish those things.
Oh, that's so exciting. Okay, industry number 4.
Yes. So this one is a little bit of a surprise, and it's a little bit it works in a very specific situation, but the fourth one is actually the nonprofit world. So nonprofits like to they're there to help people. They have big hearts, they have a mission, they have employees that are engaged, everybody is working towards something. And while they don't necessarily have a a budget the size of maybe a government entity or a big corporation, they have a vested interest in furthering their mission. So if your program aligns with them seeing success in their mission, it's going to be very helpful. They also have to be very transparent with how they spend their money, where they spend their money, things like that. And so being able to, they have caps on how much they can spend on salaries typically. So they've got, cash that they want to put back into their programs, back into their business to further their mission. So if your program aligns with that and you've got those good relationships, you've got that good track record proving that you can get that result for them, it's a great place to be.
Fantastic. I love that. And we have also seen success with our clients in that area. And I think that you were part of some of those deals, or you were around in some of those deals last year for a couple of clients that were going through. And it really was surprising to me, I'll be really honest, to see exactly how much nonprofits were spending on programs. And certainly encouraging to see that in their desire to purchase programs that help them accomplish their mission it's frankly blows my mind. I'll be really honest. Makes me really happy because our clients are making money and the organizations are really happy, but it still surprises me to see how much the money that they will actually spend on the right types of programs. So that's awesome. Okay. And then number 5, what is the last one?
The fifth industry is actually healthcare. Healthcare is massive and there are so many different segments of it, and they have money to spend. They tend to be more heavily regulated, so depending on your program, it may have to be compliant with certain things. But healthcare organizations they have a mission. They have things that they're trying to accomplish. They need to take care of their patients. They need to take care of their staff. So if your program helps them to deliver better care, keep their staff happy, save them money in the long term, they're willing to spend that money to save that money in the long term, especially on the scale that most healthcare organizations operate at. Being able to see that that really high ROI on that return on their investment in your program, it's worth it to them. It really is. And so being able to, help in any one of those areas. Increase that quality of care, increase their patient outcomes, help their staff be more engaged, help with their retention, help with their success, and then ultimately save them money through either one of those things or just money saving efforts in general. That's going to be, it's a really, really great place to be. And once you get into healthcare, it's easier to go into other areas of healthcare. So that's also a really nice part of it. It's very similar to government and education that way. They tend to be a tighter industry. And so it's easier to roll that into referrals with other organizations.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I remember my first big program that I ever sold, my whole package and course and content and everything was to a healthcare corporation, which was actually to a hospital. And interestingly enough, their desire to buy it was marketing. Because they were patient facing classes and courses and content that I was selling. And this hospital wanted to compete so badly, and they wanted to be the go-to hospital in their city. And that was really valuable to them, to bring in all of my trainings and programs and content in a way that they had exclusivity to it, and they paid me for that exclusivity that nobody else had it. And they really wanted to increase the number of patients that were going to their hospital for a specific reason. And I remember actually being really quite surprised at that. So also, you guys, if you have programs that could be patient facing as well, for healthcare, certainly that's another opportunity for you guys as well. And I can speak from experience. So let's kind of do a quick recap. So the whole entire purpose of this episode, and we're doing some mini episodes here to really help people get great information fast. So the whole purpose of this episode is really identifying, who do you sell your licensed program to? Who do you sell your training program to? And you talked about, obviously, making sure that our listeners understand the benefit and who really benefits, whether it's internally and externally. And then you talked about, definitely the path of least resistance is going to people you already know, your network you already know. Who do you know? Who have you worked with in the past? Who do you know that may be in a C-suite level? So certainly that is the fastest way. If, however, you're honestly like a lot of our clients who haven't worked in C-suite, and they want to sell their programs, you just went through the top 5 industries and the types of programs they buy all the time in what they're looking for. And you said you covered number 1, financial, tech, and just overall corporations. You talked about what they were looking for, their drivers, and what type of programs they are constantly on the hunt and they are constantly purchasing. And then you went in to talk about government and education. And again, we have a lot of clients with programs in government education and who are building programs for government and education. And to me, that whole thing is so fascinating. I'll share one case study really quick, that a few years ago, we had a client that taught how to create great videos on social media. And she literally taught how to do reels. And it was fantastic. And her program was actually licensed by 2 different universities in their marketing departments. And it was so specific and it was so niche, but those universities only taught like macro marketing. They weren't talking about like micro marketing on a certain platform level, and her program was really valuable. And so you don't have to have something that is more traditional, but we see very niche specific programs being licensed by universities and organizations. It's fascinating to see what they're looking for, and they're constantly trying to innovate. You talked about number 3, you covered startups, funding. That was just brilliant. Number 4, you covered nonprofits, and number 5, you covered healthcare. What is like a final closing thought that you want our listeners to walk away with when it comes to who to approach, who to sell your program to? Any final last words of wisdom on this?
I would say never underestimate who's around you in your life. So if you're planning on licensing your program, start talking about it. You never know who knows somebody who's neighbors with somebody else that can get you an introduction. It happens all the time, and it's so surprising, and it's such an untapped resource, just being able to talk about it. The more you talk about it, the more you're on people's minds, the more you might get, your office neighbor, if you are in kind of a more general, like I work in like an executive suite situation. So all my office neighbors run their own businesses, and we talk about things all the time, and they're all constantly like, oh, how you're working on this, or you have a client this, I have an introduction here, I know this person, I know the head of this organization, or I worked with this nonprofit a year ago. You never know who knows who. So being able to just keep talking about it and really keep yourself top of mind, you just never know what's going to come of it. So never underestimate those initial conversations.
Oh my gosh. That is great advice. And just to put a bow on that it's not just theory. One of our clients, she went for a walk with her neighbor, told her neighbor what she was doing, and he was the one that created the introduction for a contract she has on the table for 1.5 million. Right?
Yeah.
So I mean, literally, this guy she's lived across the street from for 20 years. She really didn't know exactly what he did, and they started talking, and that was where that conversation led to. So that is awesome and hopefully super inspirational for our listeners. Thank you so much for tuning into this show, you guys. Emily, thank you so much for being here, and let's go and dive into the next episode. Okay, what a great episode. So this is our implementation time. Now, you heard from Emily about what the industries are buying, and you also heard me unpack for those of you guys that might not have any corporate connections. Like I didn't have any corporate connections, and frankly, a lot of our clients don't have corporate connections. Maybe you have never worked in a corporation before like me. And so when you go to start selling your trainings and programs to other businesses, perhaps in other industries that you haven't worked in, I understand there may be some intimidation with that. And this entire episode was giving you the confidence to let you know, listen, if I could do it, believe me, anybody can do it. And we are here to help you do it. And it's not as big and hard and as intimidating as you think. So choose one thing to take action on from this episode. First of all, if you haven't gone back and listened to the previous episodes, 290, 289, 288, really back in the episodes of what is licensing, how to package your course and your training program to sell it to other entrepreneurs, small businesses, and nonprofits, then maybe that is your action item. Or if you're ready to take to the next step and build your first licensing action plan, cruise over to licensinglaunchpad.com, dive into that little mini training where we're going to take you through the steps of understanding what you have to license, what is valuable, the street value of that, and we're going to unpack for you the top 10 industries and all the programs that they are buying, in addition to who exactly to reach out to in each company to start the sales process with. So we've done all that work already for you, and you can cruise over to licensinglaunchpad.com and get access to that. And of course, if you are ready to dive into licensing, you can also apply to work with us, where you can actually work with Emily as well, where she comes in and works with our clients in making sure your whole entire sales process is ready to go. Cruise over to sweetlifeco.com and you will find where you can apply to work with us in Amplify, which is our licensing accelerator. And I would love to meet you over there as well. All right. So again, this is episode number 291. In next week's episode, we are diving into actually how to hold the conversations with what we call that internal champion. What exactly to say in your first outreach with a company. And we're unpacking all of that for you on next week's episode. So make sure that you click subscribe. Please share this with your friends, and we really appreciate it. And I will talk to you next week.